the education of over 90% of the world's student population was disrupted due to COVID-19. No one was prepared for the unprecedented crisis, nor the immediate response that would be required. Distance and online learning became the only means for institutions to keep the doors of learning open. For most, this was an entirely new experience and uncharted territory. Years of advocacy would not have caused the world to adopt distance learning as it was obliged to do almost overnight. So how can we use this acceptance as an opportunity to build resilient education systems? As you know, my organization, the Commonwealth of Learning, works in 54 member states that span all regions of the globe. What kind of support did countries require during the pandemic? First, there was the need for quality content, especially at the school level, which has the greatest number of displaced learners. Second, there was an urgent need for teacher training in distance and online education. Third, institutions required support to leverage a range of technologies for distance learning, including print, radio, TV, and online, so that even the most remote communities could access learning. Fourth, with the continued lockdowns, there was a need for alternative assessment and examination systems. And lastly, countries required enhancements to their digital infrastructure to provide an enabling environment for effective distance and online provision. CALL, of course, responded swiftly using a multi-pronged approach. And this meant providing guidelines and instruments, building the capacity of teachers, tailoring specific responses and solutions to requests from member states, and promoting collaboration and resource sharing. Let me give some examples. In partnership with the OER Foundation and ICDE, CALL launched OER for COVID, and the participants surveyed from 89 countries stressed the need for curating content linked to the national curricula rather than simply providing access to more repositories. CALL responded by creating a video-on-demand service in STEM subjects aligned to the curriculum in Fiji, in Nauru, and in Samoa. CALL offered a MOOC on using OER for online teaching in partnership with the Ministry of Education in Trinidad and Tobago, which trained over 8,000 teachers in the country. During the pandemic, CALL provided support to campus institutions in Nigeria to go dual mode, and higher education institutions in Antigua and Barbuda, Kenya, and Malaysia to integrate technology-enabled learning. A university in Zambia requested support for integrating employability into the curriculum, and the University of Rwanda is developing online security and privacy policies, which we will then make available to other institutions. So these few examples give you an idea of what institutions in the Commonwealth are prioritizing as a result of the pandemic. Lack of access to the internet has been a major issue at this time, further disadvantaging those from low-income groups. Throughout its history, distance education has been leveraged to address issues of social justice and inequality. UNESCO estimates that 11 million girls are likely to drop out of schools following the pandemic. Open schools are flexible and cost-effective, making them a viable option for girls. Another constituency that is in danger of being further marginalized during this crisis are persons with disabilities. Even in normal circumstances, the participation of persons with disabilities in higher education particularly has been dismally low, especially in developing countries. Research shows that persons with disabilities prefer open and distance learning because of the flexibility, convenience, and degree of anonymity that it provides. As the ODL community, we all need to take a more proactive approach to ensure that both women and girls and persons with disabilities are not further marginalized in a post-pandemic world. From the current crisis, we have seen that countries with strong and robust existing distance education systems have been able to maintain continuity much more successfully than those without these systems in place. India, which has a thriving system of open universities, a national institute of open schooling with sites throughout the country and state open schools, a robust national online learning platform, and a wide range of radio and TV content, is an example of a resilient ecosystem which can deal with current and future crises. When the pandemic struck, the open schools in Botswana and Namibia responded immediately by sharing their resources so that all learners in their countries could access quality learning materials. So by having strong systems in place before disaster strikes, these countries have maintained the continuity of learning during the pandemic. However, as we know, these systems have required thoughtful and systematic planning. Many of the concerns about quality and access during the current pandemic are largely due to the fact that countries have not had the time to plan the rollout of distance education. Pandemics, climate change, and social and political unrest are realities that we will continue to face in the future. How can governments begin to build education systems that not only respond to disasters, but are resilient to them? Governments have an important role to play in the sustainable and systematic integration of distance education into national systems. Countries must develop appropriate national ODL and open educational resources policies, frameworks, as well as national ICT and connectivity strategies to overcome access barriers. Inclusive policies focusing on persons with disabilities should be implemented to ensure that no one is left behind. Institutions must boost investments in technology infrastructure and develop online learning platforms that cater to large numbers of learners and support a range of affordable and appropriate technologies. Institutions must also encourage cooperation to avoid duplication of efforts and to enhance impact. The current challenge of COVID-19 has provided us with an opportunity to rethink and recalibrate our approach to education. it is time to build resilient education ecosystems so that they can both survive and be prepared for future crises. The distance learning community has a leadership role to play in this whole thing. First, we need to look beyond the current crisis and build the capacity of institutions in all aspects of distance and online provision. The future of learning will be blended, and we have much to contribute. Second, the high rates of unemployment among the youth and the changing nature of jobs requires constant skilling and reskilling. How can we work with industry, employers, and training providers to offer short courses for employment and entrepreneurship? Third, we have seen a mass uptake of self-directed learning during the pandemic. And this becomes an important opportunity to promote lifelong learning. Lifelong learning is central to the mission of many open universities. And we can play a leadership role in demonstrating how this can be effectively implemented. The pandemic has been a second coming for distance and online learning, which has moved from margin to mainstream. We have much to contribute. Resilient systems will enable us to face the brave new world with confidence. And with that, thank you and every success for this conference.